Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our tag, The Africa We Must Build, brought to you by Square One Eco Africa. My name is Rosalia Wangoi Karanja. I am the founder and executive director of Square One Eco Africa, aka SOEA. At Square One Eco Africa, we are all about sparking change from the ground up, tackling climate change, food insecurity, environmental degradation, and inequality by blending community power, technology, and storytelling. And today, we are taking that mission right into the classroom. With most schools across Africa reopening for a new term, others already in their final term of 2025, and some beginning an entirely new school year, this is a powerful moment to reflect on the role of education in shaping Africa's future leaders. But the numbers are sobering. Hear this: 98 million children in sub Saharan Africa are out of school. That is according to the UNESCO report. Only 71% complete primary school, and just 36% make it through secondary school. Despite having the world's most climate vulnerable region, climate literacy is almost absent in African classrooms. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is moving. Italy, for example, made climate change compulsory in schools back in 2019, over 5 years ago. The Eco Schools program now engages over 51 million students worldwide in sustainability projects. In the UK, youth-led campaigns are demanding climate education across all subjects. In Africa, we cannot afford to lag behind. Embedding climate literacy in schools can transform millions of learners into climate smart leaders, innovators, and resilient citizens, helping us build the Africa we must build. To explore this important conversation, I'm joined by someone truly inspiring, Lillian Namalla from the great country of Uganda. Lillian is a passionate climate educator and advocate for climate justice. She's shaping young minds in the classroom, leveraging EdTech to empower learners, and working to influence education policy so that climate justice becomes central to how we teach and learn. Before I dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel on at Square One Eco Africa and click the bell so that you never miss an episode in this series. And we want to hear from you. Drop your comments, share your conversation and thoughts, and ask your questions. We'll continue the conversation with you even after this episode. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Okay, one story that I have that really stood out for me was back then in some place called Buyikwe. And as we were going through, like, still trying to teach about climate change, climate advocacy, and all this conversation coming with lots of complicated, anonymous words, uh, we came across a certain old young community. It has both the old and young. And we're having conversations because it's close to Elgon Mountains, Bududa. Historically, it has so many landslides that are happening after, I don't know, 2 years or 3 years. And we're asking them, why don't you leave this place. You're
Okay.
aware that landslides are happening, government is trying to resettle you, and why are you still comfortable living in such a place where you know that disaster can happen anytime? And it gives you memories, it gives you this. And the sad truth was, when one old gentleman, though gentleman old, so one old man just told us, young
Uh-huh.
girl, you know,
Uh-huh.
he just in a low tone came and told us, young girl, these changes that you are talking about, the uncertainty you're making me be aware of or be vigilant about, you're showing care. We have seen tons of people come to this to collect data, to collect all this information about us. But do you really ever ask yourself why we stay? Because for them, they have an emotional attachment, cultural attachment to the place and area. And to our disappointment, he highlights that it is the ventures that we come to do, such as mountain climbing, all these things that are evoking this. Because in his argument, he's talking about it in a place of, we've not had these conversations prior. We have
Mhm.
lived for generations and generations, and we're stable. But in the name of
Mhm.
advancement, tourism, enhancement, all these other things, we are the ones actually provoking nature to fight back. And it triggered me to now stop blaming, but be responsible for my actions. And that is why, even throughout the conversations that we have been having, I've been insisting on the fact that we be responsible, regardless of policy, regardless of parenting, regardless of the teachers. The blame game still points the fingers to us. We need to be responsible for our actions in the environment.
I am here thinking, you've given us a very, firstly, even old people are gentlemen. But I want to say that even as we continue this advocacy on climate change learning, we have no choice but to industrialize.
Mm.
And so this industrialization has brought forth the life worth living, basic needs that are there, your water, access to clean water, access to electricity, access to this technology that is allowing you and I to speak from different countries. So would we say that culture is one of the reasons why we are behind? And how then do we incorporate culture in industrialization? How do we, I don't know if there's a straight answer to
Yeah.
this or is a catch 22.
Change
Mm-hmm.
is inevitable. Change is inevitable, especially with the technology advancement and infrastructure advancement. But the call, and why also the global north is emphasizing this conversation in our context, it is trying to say, be careful while you're doing whatever you're doing. So it is not
Okay.
about saying no to infrastructure. It's not about economic development. It is about, let us be careful. Because given our nature, how we look at how our history, when you look at most of the
Mm-hmm.
historical places in our countries, they are dying out simply because we are advancing with without being conscious of leaving our legacies or our history back. Because even when you go
Mm-hmm.
to London, even when you go to, there's some historical places that have served over 300 years. But in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, is there any place in Kenya that you can point out to and say, oh, I think this place has lived for more than 1,000 years? So, in as much as we are advancing tourism and advancing economic development, we just need to be conscious. And
Sure.
from the gentleman's perspective, it
Mm-hmm.
just needs to strike a balance in
Yeah.
relation to conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you explain to these communities that ABCD is going to be happening in this community, and this is how you are going to benefit from your community, I don't think anyone I don't think there is someone on earth who just doesn't want a good life.
Yes.
Every one of us wants a good life, but many of
Mhm.
the times when we are advocating for this economic transformation, it's sometimes about who has the money. Because I have the money, I can do it my way without striking the balance with the natives. Under policy studies, there is one concept. It's a 21st century concept, which is called
Mhm.
globalization, where we're talking about globalization on one hand, and we're also looking at localization. So globalization
Mhm.
is a combination of two concepts, that yes, we can be
Mhm.
local, but global. And that is why
Yes.
when you look at most of our social platforms, you realize they're telling more of African stories than the Cinderella fairy tales that we had earlier on. Why? What is evoking all that? It is because we are now trying to become proud of who we are.
Yeah, and it cannot be said better than how you've put it. And I was just thinking when you were speaking about us as Africans being able to incorporate the localization and ensuring that it helps us move forward. And I want to give kudos to Africans because I know right now there's that campaign of having a realistic map of the world
Yeah.
where Africa is the size that it should be
Yeah.
and not as small as Greenland and not as smaller than United States of America, whilst Greenland, United States of America, and parts of China and China itself can fit into Africa and still remain, space remains. So I think Africans with industrialization, with the world becoming a global village and knowledge sharing, we are getting to start to stand for
Yeah.
ourselves and question the decisions that were made for us and about us. And we are now starting to say, no, hold up, this is not the truth. Industrialization got to a too much for them, as you rightfully put. It became too much for them. Now they're wondering, how do we stop all this industrialization, all these things that we are doing, and how do we stop it? We go back to the one continent that can save the entire world. I believe it can save the entire world. They come back
Yeah.
to us, they start telling us, we had a conversation on carbon credits. Oh, please plant the trees. We will pay you in credits. We will open for you carbon market. Uh, you have very strong cultures. Please do not industrialize. They bring all those things. And this is a conversation that I know happens. I don't have evidence, so nobody should come for me, but I know happens where Africa is
Okay.
taken for a ride.
Okay, let's think about our context. Let me give an example of you're in your home, you have children, and there's this
Mhm.
one auntie. Whenever they come, they reset the rules, and your children love this one auntie who always has things in their favor. Hmm?
Uh-huh.
So imagine yourself if you had grown up with that very auntie who is pampering you, giving you all life luxuries,
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
any clear guidance of how they may affect your life. And then you think about your parent as one who is insensitive, especially when we're teenagers and children. We feel you don't
Mhm.
love us enough, you're not doing all this. But it only makes sense later on when you grow up and realize that this auntie was only a visitor. They don't know the dynamics and principles of your home.
Mhm.
Hmm? And guess what? Years after, when you become a parent, you do not borrow the auntie's ideologies. You go back
Uh-huh.
to the ones that you felt that you are being loved less, you are not being understood, you are not
Mhm.
being all this that your parents were not doing in your favor, are the very
Mhm.
principles that you're giving unto your child. So that analogy should wake us up to know that we need to realize that this home of ours, Africa, the abundance that we have, we may not realize the glam that we have simply because we are comparing.
Ah.
Our issue is about comparison. Now, people
Mhm.
who have lived both worlds, for example, if a white man or a foreigner comes to Africa,
Mhm.
they enjoy our sun, for them it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Now, for you who is living in this world, you're fantasizing about the winter you have not lived. All you want is to see yourself surrounded by white snow and playing in the snow. But when you get the opportunity to go
Uh-huh.
there, you realize that's torture.
I know.
You realize I can't stand it. I keep on telling, I know most of my friends can be like, oh, I see you move here and there, but if you got an opportunity to go and live in Europe, would you take that opportunity? And I'm like, I want to live in Europe as a visitor, but I never want to live there as a permanent
A
resident.
resident.
Because one, I am lazy. Africa has taught me to be lazy. Life is soft. Life
Uh-huh.
is a little bit softer here.
Uh-huh.
But when we watch Marvel movies, Disney movies, we are blinded by the reality. Let's take a
Yeah.
look at the reports that are is given into most of these research papers
Mm-hmm.
about poverty levels in Africa, about disease levels. Have you ever compared them with other continents? They are 100 times worse than us. But because we do not have the confidence of telling our own story and only talking about the very good that we have, our story dies along the process. So it is a
Mm-hmm.
mindset change that we really need to mind shift that we really need to focus on. Let us show the beauty and understand the beauty that we have in our home, even when mommy tries to tell me or back or by then what was that spanking me, it is not
Mm-hmm.
because they don't love me, it is because they are preparing me for what is to come.
A generation that is growing. We've talked about having that auntie who gives you an opportunity and the leeway to do whatever it is. But then once that auntie becomes goes and you become an adult, you realize that that parent was trying to teach you how to be or how to live was actually right. And so Africa, we need to be that parent, not the auntie,
Yeah.
but the parent. And that is why we're saying, let's go back to the classroom. Let's start having these conversations of climate literacy in the classroom. And so a
Yeah.
question that so that we can come back to the class and say a question on climate literacy. So how can we prepare young people for green careers and Africa's just transition? Because
Okay, from a teacher perspective, I would say that the work really has to be done starting with the teacher education centers.
mm-hmm,
Because as teachers, we cannot pour from an empty cup. We need to be re-educated about climate conversations.
mm-hmm,
Because even as policymakers are going to put this under the syllabus that you teach and show the urgency of it, unless you train the teacher to know that they are equally responsible in nurturing this young learner into the very citizen that they want to lead their country in the next 20 years.
mm-hmm,
So sometimes I'm challenged by our forefathers during
mm-hmm,
the time of rebellion, when they are requesting, when they are having conversations on independence.
mm-hmm,
Have you ever imagined what kind of teachers they had that evoked this desire to begin looking at the world and say, you know what?
mm-hmm,
Enough is enough. This is our time. We need our independence. So I don't think this is a conversation that could have started in a bedroom with a parent and somehow trying to train the child.
mm-hmm.
I know the much power that the teacher holds on the child.
Yes.
Given the fact that they are spending over, the system is requesting us to have almost 21 years in Ugandan context. We
Mm-hmm,
spend over 21 years to acquire education.
mm-hmm,
But in these 21 years, the people that are inserting the knowledge that we have are teachers.
mm-hmm,
Mm. The only time you're doubting and questioning what the teacher has told you is after you have outgrown that information.
mm-hmm,
So it is the same thing that I'm seeking, that when we're talking about climate literacy, the urgency should begin in teacher training colleges and teacher retooling.
okay.
I have the organization that I do work for in terms of education consultancy. It's a climate organization. We are focusing on re-educating teachers on climate, and with the
Mm-hmm,
focus of showing the urgency and the power they have in pushing this narrative. Even when I go on my socials and try to talk about it and try to emphasize, I can't do it alone.
Mhm.
But I know if I have a community of 10 teachers, each teacher has over 10, 20 learners, 30, some have over 60 learners, and they're pushing the same narrative. I can't
Mhm.
imagine the magnitude of change that can happen by just 10 teachers intentionally pushing this very narrative into the lives of the learners. You are not only changing the learners' mindset, they're going to
Mhm.
carry this very mindset. If it makes sense, they're going to carry it home.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that is why I'm saying like we need to go back to the retooling of teachers and re-educating teachers in relation to climate literacy. Even when we have course units at the university that are talking about climate, climate education as a course and what, it is
Mhm.
not enough. Let us look at the person who spends more time with the people that are going to build the next generation.
And I cannot say it better, because as you're talking about this conversation, as we speak about learners, also needs to be in the training centers for teachers, the
Yeah.
universities, the technical colleges, and every other training center for teachers. And you made me think about the singing games that we used to have when we grew up. I met different people who did not necessarily go to my primary school and secondary school, especially primary school. But
Yeah.
if I sang a singing game, they would resonate, because I came to realize that teachers are actually taught the PE, it's called practical education, and the singing games in the technical trainings. So the
Yeah.
similar singing game that we sang, however we sang it, if it was the Mabligan, or the By Short, or whichever singing game that we sang,
Yeah.
in my locality, I come from Laikipia County in Kenya. It is the same
Yeah.
singing game that was sung in Turkana County. It is the same singing game that was sung in Samburu, in Kwale, in Mombasa, because it was inculcated into teachers while they were being taught on how to teach learners. And so I
Yeah.
agree with you when you say this conversation needs to also be in the university course education. I've talked about, and I think it brings, and you have answered it a bit, this bringing out, teachers need to learn this before they get to start teaching our learners, is
Mm.
how do we ensure that the rural and marginalized schools are not left behind in this green transition? Because I know you've touched about having teachers now learning this in their tertiary education and in their university education before they get to learners. But how else can we also ensure that the rural and marginalized schools are not left behind in this conversation?
I believe even the rural and marginalized societies or schools also have teachers, and these
Mm-hmm.
teachers definitely are trained.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not really about a specific group of teachers. If it is taken as a whole, as a course unit, and all teachers, regardless of the level you are teaching, and it's part of it and treated with the urgency that it deserves, I believe even the marginalized group are awakened to the realization that they have to do something about it. For example, let's take a look at our refugee camps. I
Mm-hmm.
imagine myself as a teacher in a refugee camp, and I'm talking about PHC, which is the primary health care. We've had the conversation in class, and we're talking about, guys, we need to take care of our bodies because one, it helps us to stop the spread of diseases, blah, 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 and all. And this one child who has gotten an opportunity to learn about that, I am
Mm-hmm.
sure when they go home, I don't think they're going to be disposing of their wastes anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like because some of the basics like beginner, you know what, if I am using any bush as what as a how do I be kind,
Mm-hmm.
laboratory,
Mm-hmm.
it has an effect on me because while it is rotting, it's going to bring flies, and from the flies, I don't know which kind of flies it's going to, then it will fall on my food. Then from falling on my food, I'm taking the food, then I am sick, I'm admitted to hospital. Those are more problems. So I
Mm-hmm.
am thinking that it's about the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Once knowledge has been availed in its totality, not just ticking off boxes, not just to say, you know what, I talked about it, but it's treated in its totality, I believe there is going to be a mind shift. And regardless of location, you can still do something.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I believe that it is this knowledge that we are talking about right now. We are talking about sharing information with our communities so that they can say, I got this information. And it is through this information that they're able to take the next step. I don't
You,
want to say that we are entirely not at fault, because I think as Africans, we have lived in ignorance for a while. And I think it is about time we shed the ignorance and started working for ourselves as Africans. Putting this curricula in schools and in tertiary trainings so that it helps, actually helps, practically helps our learners. That the teachers will be teaching learners survival skills and knowledge that they can be able to implement of schools, not only to pass exams, not only to be able to get a good placement, but they can be able to survive, practicality that they can be able to survive off a school. We talked about over 98 million students and learners out of school in Africa. Having a
yeah.
71% of learners go through primary, and then it drops all the way to 36% of them going through high school, it means that there are children who have been lost out. What education are they carrying
Mm,
from the school to their place of living, to how they
yeah.
continue with their lives? As we also push for 100% transition from basic primary education to high school, because that is the only other way that you can get the information to be able to now say, hey, hold, we need to do things differently. We need to change our curricular style so that we are also incorporating climate literacy, we are also incorporating health literacy and practical skills that are going to help these learners once they're out of schools. And so, to wrap this up, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. We digressed. We spoke about Africa. We brought out our
Yeah.
real truth. Then we came back
Yeah.
to class, now happy
Yeah.
that this is a conversation that is moving on. So, what is your call to action for educators, parents, and policymakers watching this conversation?
To the educators, my call is it's high time we begin having our own narrative at the forefront. By the narrative, I mean is the truth you believe in, the experiences that you've shared over time, the things that have worked for you. It is high time you begin talking about them. Have your
Mhm.
own narratives out there. By this, I mean if you're doing something in relation to climate, put it on social medias, tell the world about it. The only reason we're having a conversation about having this interview with you is social media.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so I'm encouraging every educator out there. It's high time you tell the world what you're doing in your
Mhm.
classrooms, because many of our parents, many of the society, even our school heads may not exactly know what you're evoking in the learners out there. So it's high
Mhm.
time you begin owning your own narrative. And to
Mhm.
the parents out there, um, the times have changed. And
Yes.
as we want to raise an Elon Musk, we want to raise which other genius do we have? Mark Zuckerberg,
Albert
please.
Einstein. Oh, for now, like the current ones.
Exactly. Yeah, as we're trying to do all this, as we're raising them, please, I don't think these men we
And they are
admire
Lico
and want our
Dangotes of
children
this
to
world.
be. Yes, I don't think they spent much time watching Nickelodeon.
Mhm.
They were reading. I
Yeah.
encourage every parent out there to take literacy as a serious skill. Educate your parents to read, educate your children to read. And it's from
Mhm.
reading that they're going to become these, they're going to begin envisioning their own future
Mhm.
as well as watching your how you act, imitating you, as well as they're imitating you, they're going to also find their own truth. And when you find the child who has found their own truth, please share the knowledge with another parent. If a learner comes from school and tells you, you know what, we learned A, B, C, D, and all along I've thought milk comes from the fridge, but teacher talks about a cow, please
Yeah.
take them to meet the cow
Mhm.
and let them learn by observation. I think that I think that's the message that I would let's create a realistic world for these learners, not the world by Disney.
Thank you, Lillian. And I'll use your parting shot to say, let's create a realistic world for these learners. Let's include climate literacy in classes, and let's see our world becoming a better place through this future generation that we're calling the Gen Alphas, the Gen Zs, and the other generations that is coming. What an amazing and thought-provoking conversation with Lillian Namalla from Uganda on the power of green classrooms in shaping the next generation of climate-smart leaders. We'd love to keep this conversation going with you. So tell us in the comments, do you think African schools are doing enough to prepare learners for the climate crisis? Do you think African schools are doing enough to prepare learners for the climate crisis? If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to our YouTube channel on at Square One Eco Africa, and click the bell so that you never miss an episode in our hashtag the Africa We Must Build series. We truly loved having you here, and we hope you gained insight and inspiration to keep pushing for a more sustainable and equitable Africa. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay inspired, and remember, the Africa we must build starts with you and I. Thank you.